I thought I would actually begin by reading a selection not by myself, something which was printed in the last issue of the Nostalgica hymnal. It's a very short piece written by a University of Ottawa student named Amber Fennick, which I quite like. It's called Keys. My little cracked egg drips ruby orbs whilst headless wives hide behind locked doors. The selections I'm going to read tonight are taken from first Lupercalia, my chapbook, which, as Rod mentioned, is available from the Bywards Press. I still have a few copies myself, so if you're interested, please do come and see me about that. The final poems I'll read are taken from Dalhousie Blues, again, my collaborative book with Jamie, Caleb, and Christine, and I also have a few copies of that in case anybody is interested in either of those. So I'll start with a couple of poems from Lupercalia. The first one is called Van Gogh's Starry Night over the Rhone, and it's dedicated to my brother, Chris Moreland, who's a big fan of Van Gogh. A blue satori of brush-savaged glory, it kicks you with its own swatched, flecked fact. No night sky anywhere ever looked quite like this. You can't imagine the roughly magnificent thickness of this aqua bruised cerulean in every blue between geology until you draw closer. Then the canvas hacks up a surge of darkly colored thunder on a clear evening of the eye. It tries to knock you over. Starry nights, smackdown, and art museum bar fight. Edge up a little more, careful, croc hunter on some coiled cyanotic cobra, enough to touch it even, guards on both sides to be sure you don't, and if you did it'd easy rough off your fingerprints, inspire a life of high relief criminality. The riverbank is risen, strewn in violent invitation to the eye, a reflective glaze along its brushy ridges like the tracers of traffic passing fast on a midnight strip of the 87. It is its own outrageous place, spun out in a naked blaze of massy vortical strokes where stars don't shine, but bust up in yellow bright phosphor light of grenades or angry flowers outstruck like sudden knives driving at the eye. Stellar whiteheads on the face of time. The same stars are thinner, traced with flaming tails in the water. Crest and crash above, echoed in a garbled bloom below, beside. The small, slightly blurred couple tucked in the lower right corner who look back at you, asking how long you too have been a prisoner here in this vibrant cage of livid ooze of oil, an uneasy caveat fixed in mid-stroll. They warn. Stare too long at these wild whirls and you might begin to shiver, sicken and crash, bruised from a blue flu caught walking by the cold Rhone, way to go, in a rush of cobalt and an indigo, vertigo over, shattering your bones when you break against the frame. Brother, you've been warned not to walk in that blue land by Van Gogh alone. Thanks. There's a whole sort of anecdote behind why that poem is dedicated to my brother, but it's sort of humiliating for both of us, so I won't actually share it with you now. The next piece I'm going to read also from Lupercalia is called Crux, on a concrete wall. Under darkness, underwear, odor, basement sting, must, and wet dream wounds. Tiny spider bites, sweating memories. A cruciform, coppery cross hung, left a pallid, whitish shadow, crudely detailed Jesus dying in almost aloof perpetuity, cold metal bloodied by time there. A sanguine oxide models iron ore either or, this Homelessness he evokes in me, as acid spurt etches illegible letters, as his lovely hands doodled the gospel sand. Masked in miracle, gloved in suffering, stray cut of scarlet starlight in midnight sky. Oh, Christ. An idea perfected in imperfection. An idea of God in man as God, frozen forever in a forsaken Our Father, hung here beneath the cold moon in me, tucked into my bed, a pig in the blanket, pilot, washing my hands in the numb sink of sleep. Okay, so the third and final poem I'll read from Lupercalia is sort of a visual / auditory pun piece, and it's a little bit different every time I read it. You know, it's fairly non-syntactical, and much of it is sort of non-semantic as well. It's called "Poet is the Hanged Up Man." Ditties as he dangles there, air dance at the quiet crossroads, hung up on shucked crusts of withered words, creak of strange syntactic strings, sing with sickly black crow rhapsodes, limbs waiting for wind to coolly move them like ink-bick lying in wait for dead fingers won't arise and walk away from his hanging around the mounds of 1,000 lives buried under clutter of our metaphors. Thanks a lot. And I'll just read a couple of pieces from Dalhousie, or Dalhousie if you prefer, blues. The first is called Thin King, a portrait. Appeal to how telling your teleological bent to put a hole in you the world can enter through, as you swallow a window in which you can recede, elated in dreams of distant nausea. How you're, or how you've haunted my old friend, tracing veins in perpetuity, seeking peaks in vain, hunting a height to fall from your room, a reek, burnt citrus, black smears on the desk as you bend, dank of cooking, Denken, gaunt prints, Le Penseur preps a 10cc ticket, shooting raw, cogito, intravenous transition, acrid liquid passport to kick your last, longest, hardest habit, life. In a world turning always into ripe intestinal treacle, choking on glutens of thought thick as dry air to a dying fish, knowing you'll only learn to breathe with the cessation of breath. Abdicating force, unforced, a thin pinata stuffed with insanguinated horse, your essences thickening with your lying now on the moldy bed, your lids sinking with my lying for you where I stand, speech disbanded in the doorway, looking at the wake, a wound in water, a life, ostensibly yours, has left in our pools, slow as your still rivers, junk-riddled, loss, clogged, still congealing, pallid, peeling. And I'm going to close with a poem called Suspiria, which is titled after a late 1970s horror film by Dario Argento. And the film features very lush use of cinematography, primary colors, and so on. The word apparently relates to the word for a sigh, sort of a morose exhale. This poem is dedicated to Ranald Rikildis. They sew a sigh purse, closed around poison, pass it to her pretty mouth, the curious girl, and the cryptic inhalant takes her a lung rape for the eyes of silent others. It was a bad breath she drew, too deep, a bad hand, her clearance tarot spread like a satin-streaked, barely body on a bed. Being young, beautiful, and defiant in this totentanz, a bad hand drew her under their eyes, which are the air itself, a dark charge. A sulfur and sex smell, all-seeing asphyx. And a bad death came on, shyly masked, a crudely drawn sketch, but in the loveliest colors. Florid swan song of her sigh, stem blooming into screamings, red and silver petals, growing from the grave earth of her bone's own base, and the whispers of the witches watch on from the open mouths of silent others, sitting in their farther room, sticking pins in dream dolls with butter-stained fingers. They've come quietly to see the red light spill into the blue. They've come quickly to hear themselves scream through another's young mouth. Thanks.